Welcome to Voices of Action, Session 2. My name is Nancy Lane. I'm the moderator for this session. And first we'll have Alexis Beard, who's standing right here. And he'll be speaking about what he's doing at the Science and Math Institute in Tacoma. Alexis is a high school teacher. And after that, we'll have our BC Salmon Safe team come up and do their presentation. Okay, Alexis.
Hello, and thank you for having me here today. And my name is Alexis Beard, and I am from the Science and Math Institute in Tacoma, Washington, also called SAMi High School. So just take a moment and think back to your high school experience, and now expand that to 709 acres. So your classrooms aren't in one building, they're in multiple buildings, or they're on the coast, or they're in the forest, or they're on a dock. That's really what our SAMi experience is about. So I want to tell you a story today. And when you think about this story, stories really answer some questions. And one of those big questions is how do we get high school students to have empathy for animals? And how do we get high school students the experiences that they need to enter sustainability careers or have these ideas about what they could do? And how do we have people grow to be those folks who can create those experiences? So for me, if I go back to high school, honestly, I did not know where I was going. I just knew I needed to go somewhere new. Because in my context of where I was, down in Kelso, Washington, it was all about trees. So picture this. So the year is 1989. And there I am working at a fast food restaurant. And all these folks come in and they say very clearly to me, remember, your job, the money you are paid is from those trees that we pull out of that forest. So if we stop pulling trees out of that forest, our community may come to a halt. So here I am, 8th, 9th grade, and I'm being taught this story that we have to harvest from the forest. We're not talking about sustainability, we're talking about survival. So one of the first messages I get is that, wait a second, you got to think about your jobs. But as I went through high school, I had these interesting thoughts in my brain about, so what am I supposed to do? Now, of course, I'm working fast food in 8th and 9th grade to take care of myself and to make the money that I think I will need for a future education. Because the guidance that I had, the role models that I was given were all about this. You want to make sure that you have a job, you can take care of yourself, get as many hours as you can, earn overtime if you can, and stay on that path. But things began to change. And this guy emerged out of nowhere. I always liked science fiction, and I always liked science. Actually, I had some early science experiences in another school district that made me feel that, hey, maybe science is something I can do. And those were those Mr. Wizard styled experiences where we have a teacher standing at the front of the classroom doing a demonstration, there's some magical chemistry going on, and you go, voila, now we have golden pennies. It's all fun stuff. But for me, had a bit of a chaotic life. But then this cool thing called the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, I took in end of 8th grade, said that I knew things. And this allowed the school district I was in to change my track. And so I began to be moved from a general track into an AP track. And they asked me one very important question. If you could take any class you want to take, do you want to, actually, what do you want to take? We need to put you somewhere. I said, do you have any science classes? And so I got put 1 year ahead in science because of my performance on the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. And that one little move began a chain reaction over time, because that helped me get into the AP track quite well. But once I was in the AP track, now I am taking AP courses. AP biology, AP chemistry, AP history, AP fill in the blank. In my AP biology course, one day the instructor, the late Mr. Wardlow, he passed out these flyers, something called Apprenticeships in Science and Engineering, and said, take one if you want. And to me, it was time I would not get paid for working at the restaurant. So it wasn't something I was going to do. But one of the students said, hey, Alexis, you're smart. You should do something like this. And so I took the flyer and went, okay. And then I read the fine print. You actually could get paid to do this. So that totally changed the game for me. And I applied for it. And what happened was I was basically gone to an interview and then completely rejected outright. I was like, oh, okay. So I go back to what do we do? Go back to working at the fast food restaurant, make sure we have our hours in, and move forward through time and do your best you can in your classes. That's basically what you do. But then I got a phone call. And the phone call was from the late Dr. Jeffry Gottfried of the Oregon Museum of Science Industry. And he said, how would you like to apply for my program, which was the National Science Foundation's Young Scholars Program? And I said, okay. So I applied to Dr. Gottfried's program, got in, and the next thing I know, this is me. I'm standing outside of Hawthorne, Nevada, on a hillside in something called the Pamlico Formation, and I just pulled my first fossil I ever found out of the ground. And that's an ammonite on the KT boundary. Ultimately, remember, there was a period of time when, life on Earth was very different. And that ammonite, to me, it was special because I found it. It wasn't set there for me. I wasn't told to go get it. All Dr. Gottfried said was, here's the site. Here's the map. Go out. Here's what you guys were looking for. Go find things. Follow the beds. And so I'm basically walking up and down this hill looking for little tiny things in the rock. And those little tiny things, some glinted, some didn't. Remember in geology, when we find a rock, the most important thing we do is we pick it up and we taste it. Because if it sticks, it's a fossil. And that one stuck. So to me, that got me really engaged in this idea of, wait a second, I can do science, I can be in the field, and my interest grew from that experience. And that was good. Summer ends, what happens? We go back to high school. Where do we go? Back to the fast food restaurant. But senior year rolls around. I do a second round with Dr. Gottfried at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, and then we start doing the whole college application game. And so I applied to colleges, and it was good. But the thing is, in my mind, I wasn't going to go to University of Washington. I wasn't going to go to Washington University. I wasn't going to go to any of these other colleges because they're way too expensive. I had $5,000 saved up. That's what I had. I could afford Lower Columbia College, and that was good. Because in my family, community colleges was what you did. I watched my mother raise 3 kids on her own, starting from a 1970s equivalent of a GED, go from being a CNA to being an RN nurse, all through community college. So my model was set and locked. And what she told me was, become an X-ray tech. They make really good money. Become an X-ray tech. And Wenatchee has a great X-ray program, well, from what I understood at that time. Then I get a phone call again, and guess who it is? Dr. Gottfried. He calls back again. And he goes, hey, there was a college acceptance meeting, and you weren't there. I go, because I'm not going. He goes, why not? I go, unless you got $100,000, there's no way I'm going to that college. And he goes, I'll call you back. Calls you back, and basically an hour later says, you're not going to school tomorrow. You're getting on a plane. You're going to California. I'm giving you your shot. You need to go to Claremont, California. You need to go to the admissions office at Pomona College. You have an interview. At this time, you're going to go in, and you're going to get yourself into that college. And so I did that. Terrified, absolutely. Bit of a risk. Part of me is saying, this is not what you do. This is not what we do. This is not what we do. You are insane for going on this particular mission. But I did, and I won. That was cool. At that moment, Dr. Gottfried changed my life for the better. Because we ask, well, how do we get people engaged in these STEM fields? How do we get people built? We have to build experiences in the education programs like the National Science Foundation's program I was in, that allows folks like Dr. Gottfried to help coach and mentor people along that path. Mentorship is an incredibly important thing. And for me, Dr. Gottfried did a great job. Changed my life, not just mine, he changed hundreds of lives for the better with his programs. So, went to Pomona College. It was definitely a different experience. So here is 1990s me. You know, late 1990s me. Look at the microscope. And then this is Dr. Hazlitt. He is one of the world premier experts on volcanoes. So everything that's happening in Hawaii right now, he is most likely there. But in my college experience, I jumped more into science, and I thought, oh, maybe I can do more than paleontology. Maybe I can do molecular biology, because it sounded really cool, and everybody was saying that in the opening seminars. And of course, at colleges like Pomona, you have 150 students in a class called GChem, or General Chemistry. And unbeknownst to me, even though it was an AP program, I wasn't taught how to survive one of those programs. I wasn't told that those programs weren't about ensuring everyone's success. Those programs were about finding the best of the best. And as I took that program, by the third test, the class had been reduced to 30 people from 150. I was told to leave outright. I wasn't going to give up. And he said, no, just go. That's the first time someone ever told me to just go. It's better for you if you do this. So I dropped GChem and I dropped the whole molecular biology idea, and then decided to major in this thing called social science. It's amazing. In a field called STS, Science, Technology, and Society, which to me was a new major at the college. But what I saw it as was, wait a second, how do we use science to make decisions? And as I went through my college experience at Pomona, I finished the STS major middle of my junior year. And I decided, hey, I'm just gonna do another major. And guess what I did? Geology. Went back to a science that I felt very, very comfortable with. I wanted to do a science major, because remember, there's this whole debate about social sciences and hard sciences, but in my mind, they're all the same thing. And so I ran a geology major and then decided a thesis project that was a combination of the two. Because one of the things that I saw as an STS major was this idea of science literacy in the American public, and that it really wasn't super high. It wasn't a high number, so to speak. And I also saw that geology really helped me get into sciences, and so that may be a way for me to teach sciences and helped to create science literacy. And so that was my thesis, was using geosciences as a vehicle towards science literacy. But I didn't end my college career taking a degree or a program in geology, because the options that were available in the mid-90s weren't that great. But I was found by the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, and they had a program mentoring folks to become teachers. And so I entered their teacher program, which then took me to the University of Puget Sound, and then I ended up becoming a classroom teacher with the Federal Public Schools, and I taught in junior high and middle school. I helped to develop a high school, and worked in this idea of what's called innovative schools. Because my first program that I entered was a traditional school. The science I saw was someone standing in front, students just simply writing notes. When I went in, I was like, I don't want to do this. So we did volcanoes, because I was taught by the best volcanologists in the world, so we're doing volcanoes, but we're not doing baking soda and vinegar volcanoes. Our volcanoes have a whole under-plumbing and structure and pressure chambers and little levers and things so that when they erupt, they actually erupt and create faults. And so I wanted to move from students standing here to students standing here and here and here and here and here and here and here, and I just walk around the room while everybody does their projects. And so my vision of STEM education wasn't, look, we're doing science, watch me do this, was you're doing science. I'm watching you teach me about volcanology and teach me about your systems. Then I'm asking you questions that help guide you, the student, in designing each one of your systems. And what happened next was COVID, of course. And I decided actually at the end of COVID that teaching was done, because COVID was a glorious battle to keep the school together. But I met someone at a garage sale, one of the co-directors at SAMi High School. And we talked about this idea of place-based education, and we talked about this idea of working with partnerships with the Defiance Zoo and Aquarium, and with we then called it Metro Parks. Now we call it Parks Tacoma. And so I go from being this teacher I go from this kid over here working in a fast food restaurant to someone playing in the desert picking up fossils, to a college student bouncing around trying to figure out majors that work for them, to junior high, middle school, high school teacher, to where I am now. I am sitting on docks holding very long yellow cables, dangling them into the water, is what I'm doing. Because what we do at SAMi is place-based education. And for me, innovation in education is ultimately giving students an experience that cannot happen anywhere else. And at one time I used to think, oh, you can only do this in one place. No, what you got to do is look at the land that you're on, look at the water that you're on, look at the air that you're on, look at the environment, and you can create unique educational programs anywhere you are. You just have to listen to the land around you, listen to the water around you, and you can learn all those things. So we build these student-built, remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. They're made of PVC pipe, bilge pump motors, furnace wire, foam, and dual pole, dual throw switches, and of course 12-volt batteries. And we're able to take all those ROVs, they are put into the water around our net pen. Remember, SAMi is a high school that's about empathy for animals. And so what I'm doing at SAMi is working on a program to have students use technology to help maintain our net pen of 100,000 Chinook salmon that are part of our community. These come from the Puyallup tribe. They bring us the salmon. We put them into the net pen. And then our students at SAMi, we feed them. We watch over them. The ROVs inspect the nets underwater. The ROVs also inspect the ground under the net. Because we're putting 100,000 fish in one spot, right? And we're feeding them with all that food, right? Is that going to have an environmental impact? The answer is, depending on the conditions, the answer is yes. But this area here has the currents are just right here at Point Defiance, that we found that the area is clean. And the ROVs are what we're using to confirm that. Other parts in the Sound may not be a good place for a net pen, but many parts are. And what we do every year in June is we release around 100,000 salmon. Now, of course, there are some friends who come by. We'll have pictures of our friends. You know who our friends are? The herons, the otters, and the seals. Herons, by the way, I don't have a good picture of this one here. These are some of our ROVs that students have had in the water. How do we do the photography? GoPro cameras. That's the magic. You want to use GoPro cameras. And there's two different ways to do that. But all the ROVs you're seeing are student-built. They're not my designs. They're not me lecturing. I do what I say as I give you a first principle. This here is our net pen actually pulled back. This is actually one of the first times we put an ROV into the net pen. And we did that to help do some fish wrangling. But again, that design was built for this purpose. Students were given the concept, the ideas, all the different cards, so to speak, that they could play, and then they looked at the problem and said, here's how I'm going to assemble this. And their ROV, so Wouldn't that hurt the fish? No. Actually, salmon are pretty smart. They do know to run away from big sounds. Now, this is a video. Is the video going to play is the question. It's one of our things that we got with our GoPro cameras. It's a little squiggle right there. See that squiggle? Zoom. That was a quillfish. And that's from basically doing a tow line. Not from an ROV, but off of a boat. But that, when the students caught that, now remember, they have probably an hour of footage that's just water with stuff in it. And then that pops up. How do you engage students? You give them that discovery experience by setting them up for the experience. I cannot guarantee that that quillfish will appear, but by giving the students the tools and the technology and the environment and being in the right place for the discovery is what creates that excitement. So that's what I do now, is I create educational experiences so that folks can find and learn about technology and the environment and develop empathy for animals. It's not necessarily where I started, and it's definitely not an hourly job. But in all my years in education, I found that that's one of the key things that we really need to do as teachers, and as we need to create the opportunities for the experiences for growth. That's the critical thing. So we start thinking about, part of our talks today is, so how do you lead this? How do you build these things? One, remember, as a teacher leader, my job is to support my students. So I'm not trying to be here saying, do this. Remember, I'm over here. They're all right there. And then my job is to monitor and then really think about where each person is and what they need to move. Is that a lot of work? Yes, it is a lot of work. It's much more work than simply lecturing from a piece of paper. Having 5 different classes running simultaneously, knowing each person's individual needs, and then coming over to just-in-time instruction, that is how you lead. Supporting your team. Seeing students as part of your team, not someone to be taught, but as part of a community. And then lift others up. Again, that same idea. We're lifting people up. And then for me, stay curious and embrace innovation. When I look at all my experiences through high school and college and now, one, this whole idea of, each time I hit an obstacle, one, you gotta dodge or block, but at the same time, ask, well, what, is this really an obstacle, or is this something that I can innovate from? And so innovating education is one of the key things we really need to do. And embrace new tools. AI is here now, folks. We shouldn't be afraid of it. We just got to ask, how can we use this for good? And then learn and grow from your failures. That's the key thing. As you go through school and as you go through all your experiences, as the previous speaker was saying, we're taught this model that's a complete and total lie. It really is, the bumps on the road are what's going to make you stronger. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Alexis?
I'm intrigued by the statement you made that if it's a rock and you lick it, it won't stick. And if it's is that true? And
with most fossils, they tend to stick to your tongue.
They just stick to your tongue.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, for those who went to general public high school and the experience that you're showing, I feel like they would have been very cool to get to experience. And how do you, or what is your advice for getting similar experiences or growth or whatever learning after high school and sort of outside of the public school system?
One, look for those flyers, as the previous speaker just spoke about. Look for those opportunities. Like in my case, it was given to the teacher and the teacher just passed them out. Those experiences still exist at varieties of levels of education. It's just that we have to go find them. Like for example, for me, looking around for things, it was always just keeping an eye out. So I would say, look, of course what they were also saying earlier, so what I want to reiterate is, there's something that you really like and really want, then ask, who's doing that? Where's that happening? And go there and talk to those folks. So, a little bit of searching.
I just want to add in that Alexis is part of the college and the high school program at Bellevue College, and he's doing an oceanography class. That's part of that program.
A question over here.
So I'd like to ask, how have you personally embraced innovation in like your career?
So when AI magically appeared, my brain was, oh, Jarvis is here. And it was the idea of, so now my question is, how do I use this? How do I play with it? How do I have fun with it? How do I build with it? How do I build lessons with it? How do I differentiate education with it? So the embrace is simply this. New tool comes along. Hey, cool new tool. Don't dismiss it. Ask some simple questions. Could this be useful to me right now? Could it be useful to me in the future? And then, or is this just a passing fad? And what I tend to do is just kind of keep notes in my mind. And so like with AI, I realize that this is going to be something that's going to be bigger, but it's also going to be big and small at the same time. It's going to come along the lines of become part of our lives. Like internet. When I first started teaching, the internet was a new thing. We were talking about it in my grad school program. They took us to a computer lab with Mac SEs, those little, what were they, beige boxes with the 256 crisp shades of gray, and they introduced us to the internet. I'm like, okay, this is pre-Wikipedia days. All the early web, and our seminar then was, how can we use this? And so one way that I embraced it early on is I started doing what was called VRML, or virtual reality markup language, which was a type of language for the web that did virtual reality pages. And so my embrace was, discovered it, read more about it, went, oh, that's fun to play with. And really, I'm following my passion for fun. That's really what it comes down to. My embrace is it fun for me to work with? And if it's positive for my students, then that's even better. Like Legos, they're amazing.
I had a question about the fish pen, because you said there were 100,000 fish in there, but like it didn't look that big. Like I'm just wondering how you fit 100,000 fish in like that, or like is the actual pen bigger?
No, that's the size of the pen. We're not talking full salmon. We're talking that big a salmon. And then for disclosure, 100,000 arrive. Now, do 100,000 survive the trip from the truck through a tube into the pen? Not all of them. So we might be down to roughly maybe 99 some odd thousand. How many do the herons eat? By the way, the herons are amazing. They land, they look at that net, they stick their head straight through the net and pull a fish out. And you're like, what did you just, will you please? No, fine. And they just eat the fish. So we actually had to change nets. So due to the heron sampling, that takes some off. And then there is the otters when they get in the nets, that also takes a few fish off the top there. Then there's the general morts, and that is when the fish die. So it's 100,000 in quotes, but we've never actually gotten a really good count of how many are released. That's a difficult thing for us. But all of our fish are wire-coded tagged, and they've started coming back. We got our first hit from a run, from a 2023 run. The fish came back. It was one, but the fish came back. That was really cool.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.